am Kenji. I'm part of Falcon Tour in Taldegor, and I am making assassin throwies. Minimal size for light throwies or light thrown weapons. I am not making pucks. These are basically circular. Sometimes they turn out a little cubey, but most of the time they're more sphere. Trying to organize my fabric here so the weight doesn't just make it slide off the table here. Okay, so I need to figure out how much fabric I need. And what I usually do is I lay out my fabric and I start rolling it up until I get a size. So in one dimension, I'm going to need it. Cubey shapes have 3 dimensions. So 2 dimensions are going to have to be, well, I'll show you. I will do what is on my head or in my head. So what I do is I fold it up and then I roll it, right? And so my rolling thickness, my rolling is where I look at this dimension where I need the width of 2.5 minimum, right? Which clearly that's not 2.5. Like I can pull up the measuring tape here. Actually, it is 2.5. And you don't want to roll it super tight. You want it to be able to compress. But I think I have too much thickness here because I'm also using camp foam, because when you roll denim up like this surface right here does not compress. The coils, it doesn't compress this way. So what I do is I put a layer of camp foam over each end of the coils to soften it. I do this with all of my throwies. So I'm going to re-roll this. And I also have to take into an account of the thickness of the camp foam, which is about, I'm going to do it for 1 inch. It's almost a half inch. Almost a half inch. So we are going to say that camp foam is a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to be a little bit over, but I'd rather be slightly over minimum than under it because you don't want to play in the gray area here. So especially with throwing weapons, you might hit someone in the face with. Trust me, I've hit plenty of people in the face with these. I whacked Hamori in the head with one of them this past Saturday, just wonk right across the temple. But he kept playing like it never hit him. Pretty funny. But I want to make sure I get the thickness. So math in my head, I need 2 inches this way. And then the camp foam will give me that extra half inch that I need for size variation, or size, just minimal size. Double checking. Yeah, see, it's not even hitting the 2.5 inch mark. See, this is what I'm saying. Fabric can be very weird, and sometimes it's better to have a little more than you anticipated. Leg size. I know I just had this rolled up, but trying to figure out. I need this width here to be 2 inches. Okay, that's fine. That's 2.5. That's more than what I need. Try to bring it down just a little bit. And sometimes I actually have to cut another strip of fabric to add to the roll here. You know what? If I fold it over another time, that thickness should help me with the coil width because I was short. So, like I said, you don't want to roll it too tight because it needs to be able to squish and compress. So, So that is actually a good size. Yeah, that's 2.5. I'm gonna measure it a couple different ways. And then after the lightly compressed rolling up and then the extra tape and stuff, it usually balances out. So now that I have my fabric where I want it, 2 inches this way, I just measured the coils. I'm gonna take scissors and just cut along here. And denim, make sure you have like actual fabric scissors because denim is very, very tough to cut through, especially when you get to the seams. Now, this is just a pair of old jeans. They're not my jeans, if you notice how big these jeans are.
They're not mine either.
Yeah, someone was throwing them out, and I'm like, hey, I'll take those. There's that. Oh, and make sure if you're using old jeans, there is a very, very important rule with Throwies: no metal. All right, even with weapons, um, any kind of weapon, a sword, a flail, you can't have metal. So when you're using an old pair of jeans, make sure you cut out all of these little metal buttons in the jeans. Make sure you cut out the zipper part in the middle. You don't want any of that in your throwies. Even if it's just a tiny little like pellet or BB size, you don't want that in there. Because if anybody ever takes it apart and sees that, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. So these jeans, as you can see, they still have all of the metal buttons, but I haven't processed these completely. I'm just using the pant legs at the moment because there's plenty of fabric here. But yeah, so now we have our fabric, and all you have to do is remember when you roll it up, you want it compressed to a certain extent, but you don't want it rolled so tight. You want it to be able to squish in all directions. All right, and then double check your width. I mean, these measurements when you're making things that are minimal or like minimum size. See, even here, I'm like slightly off with the measurements, but it's fabric. So fabric is always squishing and changing. But you see, I do have 2.5 inches. It's upside down for you, but I do have 2.5 inches there. So at this point, all you really have to do is take some athletic tape, the fabric kind, and you just tape it. And you don't want to ratchet it, okay? You just want to lightly have it on there. Just to hold that coil so it doesn't come undone while you're working with it. And then what I like to do is I like to squish the tape on there because this kind of tape, it does sometimes not stick well at first, but once you get it on there and it's been on there, it's actually really hard to pull off. If you ever have any swords where the handles are wrapped with this stuff, you know what I'm talking about. You try to remove it. It really takes a hold after a while, after it's been in there for a while. So there's your coil. Now what you want to do is you want to get your blue cant foam and your marker, and you want to trace your throwy on here. Now, it may not fit perfectly after you cut it out and put it on there. Obviously, that's not a perfect circle, right? It's more like guidelines. But trust me, it'll be fine. I've done this 16 other, no, more than 16. Because I also use these for spell balls. I just wrap them differently and give them tails. And I don't really think it matters that much which end of the throwy that your cutout goes to, as long as you can make it work with both sides. Got a text message. Cool. All right. Let me put the other side. I love these little throwies. I can't remember who. I think I had multiple people tell me use denim for your throwies. Several people from my party. And after I started using denim throwies, because I've used other throwies from other people, they let me use their gear. And the main thing about denim throwies is they have weight. So when they hit, they make a big thud. Like you can literally use these things to knock on people's door from a distance. Like you stand at the road and just pelt their door with them. It sounds like someone's punching their door. But yeah, they pack a wallop. I've never had anybody say, "Hey, I didn't feel that throwy." Uh, One of my buddies that I go to Kingdom events with, that wears full plate from King's Crossing, he doesn't feel them through the plate mail, but he specifically feels these. But he feels the shock. It rattles his gear, and he knows that he's been hit with them. So after I put it on here, you notice it's a little bulky. What I like to do is kind of angle the scissors and cut around the edges to smooth it out, because throwies cannot have any um, jagged edges or sharp corners or angles or anything like that, because these sometimes accidentally hit the face whether we want them to or not. So this is a safety precaution. And when I started making these, uh, people told me the materials. They didn't tell me how to make these. I made them several times and took them out to park with the intent of having them appraised and not used. And people would give me pointers. Oh, those corners need to be trimmed, or that edge is too hard. And eventually, I kept modifying them, and I came up with this design. So after I get one on here and I like the way it fits aesthetically, it feels good, it looks good, then I just take a little bit of tape and I just wrap around the top. And remember, you want it snug, but you don't want it compressed, all right? Because when you whack people, that's going to do plenty of compressing. And you want the compression to happen when they get whacked. So so yeah, just a little bit just to hold it in place. And then the same with this side. They're not hard to make. They do take a little bit of time, but what craft in Amtgard doesn't take time, right? Like if you like crafting, then you know anything that you want to make good always takes more time to make. So of course, you make something enough times, you get better at it, and then you find little processes to speed up the crafting, and that always helps. You know what I hate about blue camp foam? It's like staticky and it sticks to the scissors and everything when you got it in little pieces. So that actually fits really nice. It's not sticking out over the edge, but if you got hit, you're hitting, something that's soft. So let me get this taped up here. Where's my edge? There it is. You will go through all the tape making days, trust me. I have plenty of tape though with me. Okay, So you have your caps on, and now that I have them both in place, how I like them, I'm actually going to put a cross piece on both ends just to make sure that those caps stay in place. I do not want the camp foam caps shifting while I'm playing because one, I won't see them shift, and two, someone will get hit and know that something's wrong. And they will say, hey, that hurt. And then I'll be like, well, I know something fell apart inside. And I haven't had that happen to me yet. I've been using my throwy sets for a year and a half ish, something like that, something around there. And I haven't had to rebuild any of them. I have had to replace a little bit of the tape on the outside because through the wet and crazy weather we have here in Missouri, humid, wet, sticky, hot, cold, sometimes the tape does peel up, and I just cut off whatever's hanging and then I wrap a fresh piece around, um, and it works just fine. But there, now you have a throwy, and it's completely squishy, malleable. You do you guys hear that thud? Can you guys hear that? Oh, it bounced. These things do bounce pretty well, but the main issue with these is that they're small, so they're easy to dodge, and it's harder to hit somebody with a bounce, but it's possible. And tall grass, they don't bounce as well, but if you're playing in a freshly mowed, grassy area, they'll bounce, especially off of shields. But next, we are going to. I like to use black for my throws just because it matches my outfits, my garb. So now, this is the laziest thing to do. Like, I didn't want to sit here and try to hand sew all of the covers closed. And I'm like, what if my throwies fall apart? Literally, you just roll it up and make sure that there's enough, like you would for a Christmas present. Make sure you have enough to fold over, right? And then just roll it in the fabric. And when you feel like you got enough fabric on there, I actually have a little too much. Then you can just cut the fabric around the throwy. This is like the laziest way of making these things, and it works so well. So I was saying, these things are so easy to make, and they're not terribly expensive. I mean, the most expensive part, probably the denim, the jeans, old pair of jeans, old jean jackets, something that nobody uses. I mean, at that point, you can even go to like Goodwill and get like a pair of like 3XL jeans for like cheap and cut them up for throwies. Like, it works. So now all I got to do, I'm going to center it more in this piece of fabric that I've cut out. So I'm going to center it a little better. And I like to take a little piece. Now, I've had these throwies. I went to Taldegore, I think it was a mid-range at Paintball to Go over in Illinois. And we had a big pirate ship. I don't know if it's still there because they're always changing that paintball course, but there was a big pirate ship there. And behind that pirate ship was a huge mud puddle. I mean, this thing was massive. It was the size of a car. And it was one of the two entryways for that ship. And so during the games, people were sloshing all through it. It was madness. And I lost like 3 of these throwies in that mud. And the reason I know is because I went digging for them and I dug through like 3 inches of mud to pull my throwies out. And I went home with these throwies after they had been soaking in mud for like 3 hours. Took them home and I got a bit of soap, mixed it with water in a ceramic bowl, and scrubbed them by hand with a wash rag. They were white throwies. And I mean, the white stained, they're dingy, but I never had to take them apart and fix them. The tape was intact. They're still squishy and malleable. They weren't destroyed at all, sitting in mud for 3 hours. They were perfectly fine. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, I love these things. They're so stupidly easy to make. So literally the ends. So I just have like a wrapping around the throwy with this fabric at this point. And all you got to do is just fold it over on one of the ends like that. And then you can do it with the other end as well. Well, I'm going to start here. What I like to do is take my tape and tape over one side and just tape that wrap down. And I know what you're thinking now is it's like, that's not going to stay. You'd be surprised. Like, I've had one corner of one of my throwies come undone. I went home, I tucked it in, added more tape. It's been fine. I haven't had an issue with it. And remember not to ratchet the tape, all right? Because you don't want to compress it. So here we go. I'm going to fold that fabric down again. And if you do ever have to take these apart, it's going to be super easy. But I don't think you're going to have to ever take them apart unless for some reason they change the rules where you can't use denim or can't foam for weapons. And I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I'm going to wrap that around. That's why I said you're going to go through a lot of tape. Lots of tape, lots of wrapping. And if you're making like 16 of these things like I did, you're going to go through a lot of tape. And there you go. There's a throwy completely wrapped around. There is this one seam here that or not seam, but the open piece that I taped down. I don't know. Yeah, you can kind of see that edge, that piece of tape from here to like here. You may want to put a section across, right? I usually do, just to keep the fabric in place. So I don't have any weirdness with the throws, they don't fall apart. And when I get this wrapped up, I will measure it for you and you'll see how big it is. I like these. I don't really care for the pucks because they don't have enough weight for what I like. And when you throw them, they're like this. You're like trying to throw I don't even know how you're supposed to hold a puck like this. And you throw it like a playing card or a frisbee. I like these because they're about the size of baseballs. When we are all kids, we are trained by our parents to throw baseballs or round objects. Does that not resemble like a small baseball size? Like they feel natural to throw. All right, let's get our measuring tool out.
Elongated too. It almost gives you like you want to put your finger along one side and like cup it with your finger.
Yep. So as you can see, let's see if I can spin this around here to where it's not upside down for you guys. As you can see, where this measuring, where it is, where it's measuring at. There we go. It is about 3 inches long, all right, which is above minimum, all right. And these aren't always the same exact size when you make multiple of them. One of my throwies is actually like almost 4 inches long, and I have one that's like 2.5 on every side. So they're not always the perfect size, but you can see right at 2.5 there, right at 2.5. So they're perfect little things, and I love them so much. They bounce. Oh, and one of the most important parts is that if you're out on the field, this doesn't just look like a throwy though, right? It could also look like a death orb, right? So one of the most important things with solid colored throwing weapons is you don't want them to be solid color because then they look like spell balls. So you want to put just a strip. I usually use a strip of white tape. I do have a set of white throwies, and I use a strip of black on those. But just a simple strip of a different color of tape across it. Just so when people get hit, they don't think they're getting hit by an ice ball or a death orb or something weird or something magical. Because then when you yell assassinate, they're like, oh, I'm frozen for 30 seconds. Or, hey, I'm dead. They get hit in the leg, and you're sitting there wasting your coup de grace because they think they got hit with a death orb. So always play fair, all right? Always push for fairness, even though assassins are cheesy, right? You definitely want to play fair. So